So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good morning. The sentence, "I don't know what I was thinking," shows how human behavior is often inexplicable. And when people say to me, I sort of giggle when they say, "I don't know what I was thinking." We all know that feeling. I can take a guess sometimes what people were thinking when they did whatever it was that they did, but I'm not going to tell them. Back in June of 2012, and I think it's even more relevant today with the advent of the war in Israel, Eva Iluz of Haaretz wrote the following: "You, the reader," I say this to you this morning as well, "and I probably suffer from at least one of the following problems: lack of self-confidence, difficulty in committing to a steady relationship, a diffuse and permanent anxiety, frequent bouts of uncontrollable anger, compulsive lying or addiction to some substance, a chronic sense of guilt," and so on and so on. What's common to all of these is they are conventionally defined as psychological, and as such, the remedy is to see a therapist. And that's why last year, the industry of behavioral therapy was a $10.9 billion industry. And that's not even including the self-help books and diet pills. And with all of that, people still walk around saying, "I don't know what I was thinking." Many of us have tremendous life experience. Many of us have made mistakes in our past and have vowed never to do them again, yet each and every one of us does them again. We make mistakes over and over again. And that's exactly what we found in this morning's Torah reading. In last week's reading, the chaos began, and it extended itself into this morning's Torah reading. Even though Joseph clearly has all of the power, he seems in many ways to be out of control. He doesn't seem to really have a plan. He seems to be making it up as he goes along. And even though the only time we hear the word confusion in this morning's Parashat, it has to do with the brothers, I think it's Joseph who is really most confused. He's probably most scarred by events of his past. In this week's reading, we see Joseph having a meal with his brothers. When Joseph joins his brothers, he arranges the seating, placing Benjamin right next to him. The text says, "Vayeshvu lefanav habechor kibechoroto, ve'hatzeir ketzirato, vayitmu ha'anashim asher el re'ehu," that they were seated in a specific direction according to Joseph's design, from the oldest in order of his seniority to the youngest. And then it says, "Vayitmu ha'anashim," and the brothers were astonished. They were confused. Now, we know exactly what is going on, right? Because we know the story. We know who Joseph is, but these brothers don't. And Joseph, like the man he always was, is trying to control every little detail in his life because he has a sense of no control in his life, always being pushed around by everyone else. The key word in this morning's Parsha, I think, is vayitmehu. They were astonished. The word vayitmehu comes from the word tama, which means to be confused. Presumably, they were confused about the order they were seated in. Maybe the most senior should have sat closest to Joseph, but he did the opposite. Joseph is making his own order. He's telling his brothers exactly where they're going to go. And then in this week's Parsha, we have the same word used again. Finally, Joseph has identified himself to his brothers. And he asks again about his father's well-being. You may recall that when we came across Joseph, when he was examining his brothers the first time, and he had made initial contact, he had gleaned in that moment already the fact that his father was alive. When he says to them, you have to bring Benjamin down, they alert him that they can't bring Benjamin because he's so dear to their father. In last week's Parashat, Vayishal lahem l'shalom, Vayomer Shalom avichem hazakein. When Joseph came across them last week in the reading, he greeted them and he said, how is your aged father of whom you spoke? Is he still in good health? Ha'odeno chai? Is he still alive? And of course they respond in the affirmative. Then in this week's reading, a full 2 chapters later, strangely, Joseph, having explained to his brothers who he really is, asks the question, is my father alive? Vayomer Yosef el achav, ani Yosef. Joseph said to his brothers, I'm Joseph. Ha'od avi chai. Is my father alive? Even though we know, he knows. Why is he so confused? Why is Joseph repeating this question? Where has Joseph's mind gone? He knows his father's alive. There's no way he could have forgotten that detail in processing all of the information he had learned from his brothers. Is this the one thing he forgot? That his father was alive? And so the text continues, V'lo yachlu echav le'anototo, ki nivahalu mipanav. The brothers couldn't respond. They were dumbfounded, says the text. The word, again, nivahalu, comes from the same root, tama. They were astonished. They were confused. They were dumbfounded. There was some chaos in their minds. Why were the brothers confused? Were they confused because they couldn't wrap their minds around the idea that this was Joseph, the boy they had sold? Or was it they couldn't wrap their mind around the idea that Joseph knew his father was alive, yet he asked them again? The commentaries go wild, explaining why they were confused. Rashi says they were confused mipnei habusha, because now all of a sudden it dawns on them everything that they had done, and they were completely embarrassed. The brothers were baffled because of how embarrassed they were. It was a confusion of emotion, says Rashi. Yet the Kli Yakar, a super commentary, one who's having a conversation with Rashi, the Kli Yakar alludes to the fact that there is plenty of confusion to go around. Chashav Yosef ulai amru kein kidei sheyikmeru rachamav al hazaken. Maybe Joseph thought that they were just lying in the first place. Maybe he just thought that they had said that their father was alive so as to engender a sense of rachmanis, a sense of compassion. Maybe they had lied to him. You see, Joseph had spent so much time lying to his brothers that he conceived of everyone as a liar. See, liars think everyone is lying. The Kli Yakar is offering us something incredible, something insightful, something deep. The Kli Yakar is saying that with all the lying, with all the fabrication, all of the manipulations, that has created inconceivable chaos. Joseph has deceived his brothers, and in the process, he's confused himself. They always say, tell the truth. It's easier to keep track of your story. Joseph had confused himself. Joseph is the one who has lost touch with reality. And this all falls on the backdrop of an international catastrophe of famine that Joseph is in charge of handling. Joseph has so many responsibilities, and now all of a sudden finds himself amidst extraordinary confusion in his own family. We too, each and every one of us, finds ourselves living lives that feel tumultuous on the backdrop of a world that seems to have gone mad. Each and every one of us is affected by what goes on in our world. You can turn off the TV and turn off your social media, but you feel the conflict. I know I do every day. It's the first thought that I have when I wake up every morning. I feel it even if I'm not watching the news. We all need help sorting through the information that we have. I know I had 2 significant counseling sessions this week with people who are suffering both personally and on the backdrop of a world that's gone mad and their desire to explain it. We too are feeling overwhelmed by information and by emotion. Joseph is not the only one in the Torah that has dreams, but he is the one most incapable of distinguishing the difference between his reality and his dreams. And just as Joseph displays for us the curse of complete confusion between reality and the subconscious, Joseph teaches us that dreams have to be interpreted. As the Talmud says, Chama de lo mifshar ke agrata de lo mikre. A dream that is not interpreted is like a letter that's never been read. The subconscious, says the Gemara, must be made conscious. If we keep feeling buried, they will disturb us and they will find ways to get out. And then what we'll do is we'll act out. We will do things for which we'll say, I have no idea what I was thinking. In that same article I referenced earlier from Haaretz, Eva Iluz says the following: human beings have long suffered from afflictions of the soul, but how we have conceived of them in the past was very different from how we define them today. Afflictions of the soul were understood in religious terms. They were viewed as a result of sin or a possession of evil spirits, as punishments or as weaknesses of a particular part of the body. Among the strategies for removing or repairing them were prayer, or punishment, or ritual dances, or self-mortification, or confession, or cold baths. The Ein Yaakov, a wonderful commentary on the Gemara, says, Ein levakesh trufa lemachala chalom rak lehitpalel v'lashuv miderech ra. You can't cure yourself from dreams that haunt you until you pray and change the way you are behaving from doing evil. For the Ein Yaakov, the way you find healing begins with tefillah. Tefillah comes from the word lehitpalel, which means self-reflection. That's what prayer is. It's a time for self-reflection, to which I conclude: stay in therapy or get into therapy. But if you want it to work, then you're also going to need to pray. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Musaf, page 184, Chatzi Kaddish. Please rise.